For 300 years, humanity had been the galaxy's favorite pet. Cute, harmless, and useful for their curious minds and nimble fingers. The Galactic Council called them the maintenance species, perfect for fixing things too small or delicate for proper civilized beings to handle. Humans smiled, nodded, and fixed their machines while dreaming of stars they'd never be allowed to reach alone. What the aliens didn't know was that humans never threw anything away. Every blueprint, every schematic, every obsolete warship design was carefully stored in vast underground archives. What they called junk, humanity called preparation. And when 12-year-old Sarah died screaming in the streets of New Geneva, her blood mixing with alien snow, those archives began to hum with activity. The who killed her thought they were making an example, a lesson about knowing one's place in the cosmic order. They had no idea they had just awakened something that had been sleeping in humanity's soul since the first caveman picked up a rock to defend his family. The galaxy was about to learn why Earth had been so very, very quiet for 3 centuries. Admiral stared at the holographic display floating above his desk, watching his daughter's final moments for the 1000th time. The security footage from New Geneva showed 12-year-old Sarah walking home from school, her backpack bouncing with each step as she hummed some tune he'd never heard. Then the patrol appeared. The blue-skinned aliens towered over the small girl, their ceremonial armor gleaming in the afternoon sun. Their leader, Commander Al, gestured dismissively at Sarah when she failed to move out of their path quickly enough. In the culture, lesser species were expected to prostrate themselves when encountering their betters. Sarah, being human, simply stepped aside and continued walking. The plasma bolt hit her in the back. Closed his eyes as the recording showed his daughter crumpling to the ground, her small body smoking. He'd memorized every pixel of the footage, every expression on the aliens' faces as they stepped over her corpse without a second glance. The Galactic Council had ruled it a cultural misunderstanding and closed the case within hours. That had been 6 months ago. Today, everything would change. The door to his office chimed and opened his eyes. "Come." General Williams entered, followed by Dr. and Colonel James. The 3 officers represented the most classified military project in human history, one so secret that even the Galactic Council's extensive spy network had no knowledge of it. "Status report," said, his voice steady despite the storm raging in his chest. Doctor activated her personal, filling the room with technical schematics. "Project is complete, Admiral. All systems are operational and standing by for activation." For 300 years, humanity had played the role of the galaxy's servants. They repaired alien technology, maintained their ships, and kept their mouths shut about the true extent of their capabilities. What the Galactic Council didn't know was that every piece of alien technology that passed through human hands was reverse-engineered, improved upon, and stored in vast underground facilities scattered across Earth and its colonies. The thought humans were barely capable of space flight. They had no idea that hidden beneath Earth's surface lay the most advanced fleet in galactic history. "The Beijing facility reports all dreadnoughts are powered and ready," General Williams added. "The Cairo shipyards have completed final assembly on the new destroyer class. Moscow confirms that the experimental ships are operational." Colonel nodded. "Personnel are at full readiness, sir. Every human who lost family or friends to alien cultural misunderstandings volunteered for the mission. We have more qualified crew than we have ships." Studied the holographic fleet arrangement floating before him. 2,000 vessels of war, each one incorporating technology that the aliens believed was beyond human understanding. Fusion reactors based on designs, but improved with human engineering. Shield generators reverse-engineered from luxury cruisers and weaponized beyond recognition. Faster-than-light drives that combine the best aspects of 7 different alien propulsion systems. "What about the Council's monitoring stations?" asked. Doctor smiled grimly. "Neutralized. We've been feeding them false data for decades through their own surveillance equipment. As far as their sensors are concerned, Earth remains a peaceful, barely industrialized world with a small defensive fleet of obsolete vessels." The irony wasn't lost on. The aliens had insisted on placing monitoring stations throughout the Sol system to ensure humanity didn't develop weapons that might threaten galactic peace. Those same monitoring stations had been gradually replaced with human-built duplicates over the past 50 years, each one designed to show the Council exactly what they expected to see. The Empire believes they're conducting routine military exercises in the system, Colonel continued. Their entire Third Fleet is gathered there, including the ship that Commander Al serves on. Felt something cold settle in his stomach. The Third Fleet represented one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. 60 capital ships, 300 support vessels, and enough firepower to sterilize a dozen worlds. They had gathered to demonstrate their strength to any species that might be considering resistance to their expansion. They had no idea that humanity had been watching their every move, learning their tactics, and preparing for this moment. "Sir," General Williams said quietly, "are you certain about this course of action? Once we move, there's no going back. The Council will declare us a rogue species. Every alien civilization will be turned against us." Looked at the photograph on his desk. Sarah smiled back at him, gap-toothed and radiant, holding a drawing she'd made of him in his uniform. The drawing was crude and childish, but she'd been so proud of it. She'd wanted to be an explorer when she grew up, to see the stars and make friends with aliens from distant worlds. Instead, she died alone in the street because one alien couldn't tolerate a human child failing to bow quickly enough. "General," said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of accumulated anger, "for 300 years, humanity has been patient. We've endured their condescension, their casual cruelty, their assumption that we exist solely to serve their needs. We've watched them murder our children and call it cultural education." He stood, moving to the window that looked out over the sprawling underground facility. Through the transparent aluminum, he could see the vast construction bays where humanity's secret fleet waited in the darkness. "They think they know us," he continued. "They think we're weak, compliant, useful pets who dream of joining their grand civilization. They have no idea what we really are." Doctor pulled up another hologram, this one showing the historical timeline of human-alien contact. The first alien embassy on Earth received detailed information about human history as a gesture of goodwill. They dismissed most of it as primitive barbarism. They focused on our art, our music, our technology. They completely ignored our military history. The irony was staggering. Humanity had provided the aliens with complete records of every war, every battle, every tactical innovation in human history. The aliens had filed it away as irrelevant historical data, assuming that a species advanced enough for space travel had evolved beyond such primitive concerns. They had no concept of what it meant that humans had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing each other. "They studied our philosophy and poetry," Colonel said. "They learned our languages and our customs, but they never bothered to understand why every human military academy still teaches courses on ancient Earth battles." Nodded grimly. While the aliens had been impressed by human adaptability and technical skills, they'd completely missed the underlying truth about human nature. Humans didn't just survive, they overcame. They took everything that tried to destroy them and turned it into a weapon. The thought they'd made an example of Sarah. What they'd actually done was provide humanity with the perfect justification for revealing what they truly were. "Initiate Phase 1, ordered." Across the facility, alarms began to sound. Not emergency alarms, but the deep, resonant tones that signaled the beginning of something that had been 3 centuries in the making. In hidden bases across Earth and its colonies, similar alarms were echoing through vast underground complexes. The first ships began to move. They rose from concealed launch bays that had been disguised as everything from mining operations to agricultural facilities. The initial wave consisted of smaller vessels, destroyers and cruisers designed for speed and stealth. Their mission was simple: neutralize the Galactic Council's monitoring stations throughout human space. Doctor's fingers danced across her control interface as she coordinated the operation. "All monitoring stations are targeted. Estimated time to completion, 14 minutes. Watched as red dots on the tactical display began to disappear one by one. Each dot represented years of careful planning, the gradual replacement of alien surveillance equipment with human-built replicas. The aliens would never know their watching eyes had been blinded until it was far too late. "Sir," General Williams said, "we're receiving communications from the stations. They're attempting to contact their respective governments." "Let them," replied. "By the time those messages reach their destinations, it won't matter." The beauty of the plan lay in its timing. The Galactic Council met only once every 3 standard months. and their next session wasn't scheduled for another 6 weeks. Even if individual species tried to respond to the monitoring station's final transmissions, coordinating a response between 7 different alien governments would take time. Time that humanity would use to complete their mission. Colonel updated the tactical display as reports came in from field commanders. Phase 1 complete, sir. All monitoring stations in Sol system and outer colonies have been neutralized. We own our own space again for the first time in 3 centuries. For a moment, allowed himself to feel the weight of that statement. Humanity had spent 300 years living under alien surveillance, accepting restrictions on their own development, pretending to be grateful for the privilege of serving their technological superiors. Now, for the first time since first contact, humans were truly free in their own territory. Phase 2, he ordered. The second wave of ships began their ascent. These were the heavy hitters, battle cruisers and dreadnoughts that incorporated the finest technology humanity had ever created. Each vessel was a masterpiece of reverse-engineered alien systems enhanced by human innovation. The lead ship, Retribution, carried experimental weapons that combined plasma technology with human targeting systems. Its shield generators were based on defensive technology, but reinforced with quantum field manipulators that human physicists had developed in secret. Fleet deployment proceeding on schedule, Doctor reported. All ships are maintaining communication silence as planned. The fleet moved through space like a ghost armada, their hulls coated with metamaterial that absorbed sensor scans while their engines ran nearly silent. To any casual observer, the space around Earth appeared as empty as it had for centuries. General Williams pulled up intelligence reports from the system. Third Fleet remains in formation around. They're conducting live-fire exercises against mock targets. Commander Al's ship, the Divine Retribution, is serving as the flagship. Felt his jaw clench at the name. They had named their ship in honor of their species' divine right to rule over lesser beings. Today, they would learn about a different kind of retribution. Estimated arrival time at, he asked. Colonel checked his chronometer. 18 hours, 23 minutes at current velocity. The fleet will drop out of FTL at maximum weapons range. 18 hours. In 18 hours, the galaxy would learn what humanity had become during their centuries of forced servitude. They expected to face primitive human vessels with outdated weapons and basic defense systems. Instead, they would face the accumulated military knowledge of human history, combined with technology that surpassed their own. Doctor activated another display showing the technical specifications of the fleet's primary weapons. The new plasma lance arrays are rated at 300% higher output than standard military weapons. Our shield systems can withstand direct hits from their heaviest guns while maintaining offensive capability. What about their numerical advantage? General Williams asked. Smiled grimly. Numbers matter when both sides are evenly matched. They have never faced an enemy that knew their every tactical manual, understood their communication protocols, and had spent decades studying their weaknesses. For 3 centuries, humans had maintained the aliens' ships, repaired their weapons, and serviced their fleets. Every vessel in existence had been touched by human hands at some point. Humans knew their design specifications better than themselves. Sir, Colonel said, final personnel reports are coming in from the fleet commanders. Every ship is fully crewed and ready for combat operations. Nodded, then activated his personal communication system. Throughout the fleet, his image appeared on screens in every ship's bridge. Attention all personnel, he began, his voice carrying across the void to 2,000 ships and nearly 1 million human souls. Today, we stop pretending to be what they think we are. Today, we show the galaxy who we really are. He paused, thinking of Sarah's smile, of all the humans who had died over the centuries, because aliens considered their lives expendable. For 300 years, we have been servants, technicians, and pets. We have endured their condescension and absorbed their abuse. We have learned their technologies and studied their weaknesses while they assumed we were too primitive to pose any threat. The tactical display showed the fleet spreading out into attack formation as it raced toward. Each ship was a testament to human ingenuity, determination, and patience. They made one mistake, continued. They underestimated what humans do when someone hurts our children. Commander Al thought he was making an example of one little girl. Instead, he awakened something that has been sleeping in human hearts since our ancestors first learned to make fire. He thought about the millions of humans throughout the galaxy who would be watching this moment, who had spent their lives fixing alien machines while dreaming of the stars their own species had been. Today, we take back our dignity. Today, we show them what happens when you mistake patience for weakness. Today, we remind the galaxy why every human military academy still teaches the ancient maxim: speak softly and carry a big stick. The transmission ended, leaving 2,000 ships racing through the darkness toward their destiny. Behind them, Earth continued its slow rotation, looking to alien observers like the same peaceful, harmless world it had appeared to be for centuries. But beneath its surface, the forges of war were already preparing for the next phase of humanity's awakening. Captain stood on the bridge of the UES Nemesis, watching the stars shift as her ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Around her, the bridge crew worked with the quiet efficiency that came from years of secret training and preparation. "Contact," reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah from the sensor station. "Third Fleet detected at coordinates 347 Mark 182. 63 capital ships, approximately 300 support vessels, all in standard parade formation." Nodded, studying the tactical display that showed the alien fleet arranged in perfect geometric patterns around. They loved their formations, viewing military exercises as opportunities to demonstrate the mathematical precision of their superior culture. Today, that predictability would work against them. "Any indication they've detected our arrival?" asked. Shook her head. "Negative, Captain. Their sensor sweeps are focused inward on their exercise targets. They're not even maintaining perimeter watches." The arrogance was stunning, but not surprising. In 3 centuries of galactic dominance, they had never faced a serious military challenge. Their empire had expanded through a combination of superior technology and the complete absence of any species willing or able to resist them. That was about to change. "Communications, patch me through to the fleet," ordered. Around the Nemesis, nearly 2,000 human vessels materialized from the darkness as their stealth systems powered down. The sight would have been terrifying to any observer, an enormous fleet appearing seemingly from nowhere, their hulls bristling with weapons that incorporated the best technology from a dozen alien civilizations. Admiral's image appeared on his command screen, broadcast from the fleet flagship Retribution. His face was calm, but she could see the controlled fury burning in his eyes. "All ships report ready," Admiral said. "Fleet is in position and unaware of our presence." "Understood," Captain replied. "Begin Phase 3. Phase 3 was where 3 centuries of careful planning would be put to the ultimate test. Human intelligence officers had identified every major military installation, supply depot, and command center throughout their empire. While the Third Fleet was being destroyed simultaneous strikes would cripple the war machine across dozens of star systems. But first, they had to deal with the fleet in front of them. "Weapons status?" asked. Commander Torres at the weapons station smiled grimly. "All plasma lance arrays charged and ready, missile tubes loaded with antimatter warheads, shield generators at maximum power." The Nemesis was a testament to human ingenuity. Her hull incorporated metamaterials that had been reverse-engineered from stealth technology and improved with human innovations. Her weapons were based on plasma cannons, but enhanced with targeting systems that no alien species had ever imagined. Most importantly, her crew knew exactly how ships were designed, where their weaknesses lay, and how to exploit them. "Sir," reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the flagship. They're demanding identification." Looked at the tactical display. The alien fleet was beginning to react to the sudden appearance of human ships, but their response was confused and disorganized. They were trying to maintain their parade formation while simultaneously attempting to assess the threat level. "Put them through," she ordered. The main screen flickered, showing the bridge of the flagship Divine Retribution. Commander Al stood in the center of the command deck, his blue skin flushed with indignation. Behind him, alien officers scrambled to understand what they were seeing. "Human vessel," Al said in his species' arrogant tone, "you are in violation of Galactic Council Resolution 2847. No human ship may enter this system without proper authorization. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." studied the alien who had murdered Admiral's daughter. Al was tall even by standards, his ceremonial armor polished to a mirror shine. The medals covering his chest told the story of a career built on crushing lesser species who dared to resist expansion. "Commander Al," said calmly, "I am captain of the United Earth ship Nemesis. I have a message for you from Admiral." Al's expression shifted to confusion. The maintenance supervisor from New Geneva? What possible relevance could that creature's words have to? "The message is simple," interrupted. "You killed his daughter, now you die." The transmission cut off, leaving Al staring at a blank screen. Could imagine the alien's confusion as he tried to process what he'd just heard. In his worldview, humans were servile creatures who accepted their place in the cosmic order. The idea that one might seek vengeance for the death of a child was literally incomprehensible to him. "All ships," broadcast to the human fleet, "commence Operation Payback." What happened next would become legend among the stars. The human fleet moved with a precision that stunned the watching. Instead of advancing in the traditional formation that alien tacticians expected, the ships split into dozens of smaller groups, each one targeting specific weaknesses in the formation. Watched as her tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Park, coordinated the attack with cold efficiency. Target packages assigned. Strike Group Alpha is engaging their command vessels. Bravo Group is targeting their heavy cruisers. Charlie through Echo are neutralizing their support fleet. The first human weapons discharge lit up the darkness like a newborn star. Plasma lances that burned hotter than stellar cores reached out across space to touch shields with devastating results. "Direct hit on their flagship," reported. "Their shields are down to 60% from a single volley." Felt a moment of savage satisfaction. They had designed their ships to fight other alien vessels with predictable weapons and tactics. They had never imagined facing weapons that combined their own plasma technology with human innovations in targeting, power management, and tactical coordination. The return fire began moments later, but it was poorly coordinated and largely ineffective. Their commanders were trying to maintain their ceremonial formations while simultaneously engaging an enemy that refused to fight according to established galactic conventions. "Multiple vessels attempting to break formation," Park reported. "They're trying to establish a defensive perimeter around their flagship." "Deny them," ordered. "All strike groups maintain pressure, don't let them reorganize." This was the advantage that 3 centuries of servitude had given humanity. Every human officer had studied tactical manuals, understood their command structure, and knew exactly how they would respond to different threats. The aliens, meanwhile, had no idea how humans fought because they'd never bothered to study human military history. They were discovering that oversight was fatal. The Nemesis rolled into an attack run on a heavy cruiser, her weapons systems locked onto weak points that human engineers had identified decades ago. The alien ship tried to bring its main guns to bear, but human ships were faster and more maneuverable than anything they had ever faced. "Target their reactor housing," ordered. "Full spread all weapons." The plasma lances struck the vessel exactly where its reactor shielding was weakest. The alien ship convulsed as containment failures cascaded through its power systems, then vanished in a brilliant explosion that briefly itself. Around the battlefield, similar scenes were playing out as human ships systematically dismantled their opponents. The technological advantage that they had enjoyed for centuries was useless against an enemy that understood their technology better than they did. "Sir," called out, "the flagship is attempting to retreat." Looked at the tactical display and saw the divine retribution trying to disengage from the battle. Commander Al had finally realized that his fleet was being systematically destroyed by supposedly primitive human vessels. "Pursuit course," ordered. "Don't let him escape." The chase took them away from the main battle, past burning wrecks and into the outer regions of the system. The divine retribution was fast, but human ships were faster. More importantly, knew exactly how fast ships could travel because humans had been maintaining their engines for 3 centuries. "Range closing," Torres reported. "Will be in optimal firing position in 30 seconds. Watched the fleeing alien ship and thought about Admiral's daughter. Sarah had been walking home from school, probably thinking about homework or friends or the 1,000 little things that filled a child's day. She died because one alien couldn't tolerate a human failing to show proper deference quickly enough. 20 seconds to optimal range, Torres called out. The divine retribution was broadcasting frantic distress signals, calling for assistance from any forces in nearby systems. The irony wasn't lost on that the ship was named after divine retribution. Today, the divine was human, and retribution was at hand. 10 seconds. Thought about all the humans who had died over the centuries because aliens viewed their lives as disposable. Every cultural misunderstanding, every regrettable incident, every murdered human child whose death had been dismissed as irrelevant by the Galactic Council. Firing range achieved, Torres announced. Target their engines first, ordered. I want him to know what's coming. The plasma lances struck the Divine Retribution's propulsion system with surgical precision. The alien ship shuddered to a halt, dead in space and helpless. Could imagine Al on his bridge, finally understanding that his technological superiority meant nothing against an enemy that knew his ship better than he did. Sir reported, incoming transmission from the vessel. Put it through. Al appeared on the screen again, but his arrogance was gone. The alien commander looked haggard and desperate, his perfect uniform torn and stained. Behind him, his bridge was in chaos as alien officers tried to repair systems that had been designed with human help. Captain, he said, his voice strained, I invoke the Galactic Convention on Honorable Surrender. I request. No, interrupted. Al stared at her in shock. You cannot refuse. The convention clearly states that any vessel. Commander, said coldly, did you invoke the Galactic Convention when you murdered a 12-year-old human girl? Did you offer Sarah the opportunity to surrender before you shot her in the back? The alien's mouth opened and closed silently. In his cultural framework, the idea that a lesser species might apply their own standards to him was literally incomprehensible. It was a cultural correction, he stammered. The child failed to show proper respect. It was necessary to make an example, finished. Yes, we understand. Today, Commander, we're making our own example. She nodded to Torres, who fired a full spread of antimatter warheads directly into the Divine Retribution's reactor core. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. Watched the debris scatter into space and felt no satisfaction, only a cold emptiness where her anger had been. Al was dead, but Sarah was still gone. Justice had been served, but it wouldn't bring back any of the humans who had died over the centuries. Captain called out, message from Admiral, the main battle is concluded. All vessels have been destroyed or disabled. Looked at the tactical display showing the aftermath of the battle. The Third Fleet, one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy, had been completely annihilated. Not a single human ship had been lost. But this was only the beginning. Sir, Park reported, we're receiving status reports from strike forces throughout space. Phase 4 operations are proceeding on schedule. Phase 4 was the systematic destruction of military infrastructure throughout their empire. While the Third Fleet was being eliminated human ships were striking supply depots, shipyards, and command centers across dozens of star systems. By the time other alien species realized what was happening, the Empire's ability to wage war would be completely crippled. Any word from the Galactic Council? Asked. Checked her communications panel. Nothing yet, Captain. The emergency session isn't scheduled to convene for another 6 hours. 6 hours. In 6 hours, representatives from 7 alien species would gather to discuss the sudden silence from space. They would debate and argue and issue strongly worded statements while human ships completed their mission. By the time the Council reached any kind of decision, it would be far too late. Set course for the system, ordered. The Fifth Fleet is conducting exercises there. They don't know yet that the Third Fleet has been destroyed. As the Nemesis and her escorts jumped to faster-than-light travel, reflected on how completely the galaxy's balance of power had shifted in the span of a few hours. For 3 centuries, alien species had viewed humans as useful servants who could be bullied, exploited, and occasionally murdered without consequence. Today, they had learned that humans remembered every insult, every abuse, and never, ever forgot when someone hurt their children. The hunt was just beginning. Counselor of the Hegemony stared at the emergency session chamber with growing unease. In his 600 years of life, he had never seen the Galactic Council convene under such mysterious circumstances. Around the massive circular table, representatives from 7 major species sat in uncomfortable silence, each one trying to understand why all communication from space had ceased 12 hours ago. The chamber itself was a masterpiece of diplomatic architecture, built to accommodate the different environmental needs of species that had evolved under alien suns. Holographic projectors displayed real-time data from across the galaxy, while translation matrices ensured that every word spoken would be understood by all participants. Today, those projectors showed mostly empty space where the Empire should have been. "The situation is unprecedented," announced Speaker, the ancient who had led the council for over 2 centuries. Her crystalline exoskeleton reflected the chamber's lights as she gestured toward the holographic display. "In recorded galactic history, no major power has simply disappeared." Ambassador Al from the collective, her multiple limbs twitching with nervous energy, leaned forward. "Our long-range sensors detect massive energy signatures throughout former territory. Whatever happened, it was coordinated and simultaneous across dozens of systems." Studied the data streams flowing across his personal display. The numbers were staggering. Every major military installation, shipyard, and command center had gone silent within a 6-hour window. The precision required for such an operation was beyond anything the Council had ever witnessed. "Could this be some form of internal revolution?" suggested General from the Titan Confederate. His species' warrior culture made him naturally suspicious of political instability. "Perhaps the client species finally rebelled against their overlords." Counselor of the Ethereal Assembly, her energy-based form flickering with uncertainty, projected her thoughts directly into the translation matrix. "Unlikely. We maintain extensive intelligence networks throughout space. No client species possessed the military capability for such an undertaking." That was the problem realized. None of the known galactic powers possessed the military capability for such an undertaking. The Empire had been the dominant force in their region of space for over 500 years. Their fleets were vast, their technology advanced, their tactical doctrine proven through centuries of successful expansion. For someone to destroy them so completely and quickly suggested either revolutionary new technology or— "Council Speaker," interrupted a voice that didn't immediately recognize. "We have an incoming transmission from human space." The silence in the chamber became absolute. Humans, the maintenance species, what possible relevance could they have to the disappearance of an entire galactic empire? "Display the transmission," Speaker ordered. The central holographic projector shimmered, then resolved into the image of a human male wearing what appeared to be a military uniform. Had seen humans before, of course. They were common throughout the galaxy as technicians and repair specialists. But this human was different. There was something in his eyes that spoke of power held carefully in check. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," the human said in perfect galactic standard, "I am Admiral, Supreme Commander of the United Earth Defense Fleet. I address you today to inform the galaxy of recent changes in the political landscape." Felt his breathing apparatus flutter with shock. United Earth Defense Fleet? Humans didn't have a defense fleet. They had a small collection of obsolete vessels barely capable of system patrol duties. The Council's own monitoring stations had confirmed this fact repeatedly over the past 3 centuries. 12 hours ago," Admiral continued, "human forces engaged and destroyed the 3rd, 5th, and 7th fleets in their entirety. Simultaneously, we neutralized all major military installations throughout their former empire. The government has ceased to exist as a functional political entity." The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Around the table, alien representatives sat in stunned silence as their minds struggled to process what they had just heard. General was the first to recover. "Impossible," he snarled, his tusks flashing in the chamber's lights. "Humans don't possess the military capability to challenge a planetary defense force, much less destroy an entire empire. Their technology is centuries behind." "General," Admiral interrupted, and somehow his voice carried easily across the vast distance between Earth and the Council chamber. 3 days ago, your species conducted a joint military exercise with the Rigel system. The exercise scenario involved repelling an invasion by a technologically inferior species using primitive tactics." The human paused, and caught something that might have been amusement in his expression. "I'm curious, General, how did that exercise conclude?" His face flushed a deep purple. The Rigel exercise had been a disaster for the defending forces. The simulated primitive invaders, using outdated equipment and supposedly inferior tactics, had completely overwhelmed the combined Titan fleet through superior coordination and innovative use of available resources. "That was a training scenario," protested. "The parameters were artificially constrained to demonstrate what happens when a supposedly superior force underestimates an enemy they don't understand," finished. "They learned that lesson the hard way." Ambassador Al leaned forward, her multiple eyes focusing intently on the transmission. "Admiral, assuming your claims are accurate, what are humanity's intentions regarding the former territories? Do you intend to establish a human empire in their place?" For the first time, his expression softened slightly. "Ambassador, humanity has no interest in empire. We seek only justice for 3 centuries of abuse and the guarantee that no human child will ever again die simply for failing to bow quickly enough to an alien master." The reference hit like a physical blow. He remembered the incident in New Geneva, a minor diplomatic footnote involving a human child who had failed to show proper respect to a patrol. The council had ruled it a cultural misunderstanding and closed the case within hours. Apparently, humans had a longer memory than anyone had realized. Counselor's energy form flickered with agitation. "You speak of justice, Admiral, but what you describe is genocide. An entire species has been—" "The species continues to exist," interrupted. "We targeted only military installations and government facilities. Civilian populations were left unharmed, though they may find the transition to self-governance challenging after centuries of imperial rule." Speaker finally found her voice. "Admiral, the Galactic Council demands immediate access to former space to verify these claims and assess the situation. You will also submit to a full investigation of—" "Speaker," said calmly, "humanity formally withdraws from all Galactic Council oversight effective immediately. We no longer recognize Council authority over human space or human affairs." The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted over each other in a dozen languages as translation matrices struggled to keep pace. The very foundation of galactic civilization, the idea that all spacefaring species would submit to council mediation, had just been shattered by the galaxy's most unassuming member. Remained silent, studying the human admiral's face as the other council members raged. There was something almost sad in his expression, as if he regretted the necessity of what humanity had done. "Furthermore," continued once the shouting died down, "humanity formally claims sovereignty over all former territories not inhabited by non-client species. Those client species are free to establish their own governments or request human protection as they see fit." General slammed his massive fist on the table. "You cannot simply claim an entire empire. The Council will not permit." "General," said quietly, "what will the Council do to stop us?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Did the calculations in his head and felt his circulatory system slow with dread. The combined might of the remaining council species might be able to match whatever force humanity had assembled, but the cost would be staggering. And that assumed they could coordinate their efforts, which their last 3 centuries of peaceful coexistence had not prepared them to do. We will impose economic sanctions," Ambassador Al said uncertainly. "Cut off trade relationships, isolate humanity diplomatically until—" "Ambassador," interrupted gently, "who maintains your FTL communication networks? Who services your automated manufacturing systems? Who repairs your environmental processors when they malfunction?" The answer was obvious to everyone in the chamber. For 3 centuries, humans had made themselves indispensable to galactic civilization by maintaining the technology that kept it running. Every species had human technicians working on critical systems throughout their territory. Realized with growing horror that humanity didn't just have the military capability to destroy their enemies. They had the technological leverage to cripple every major civilization in the galaxy simply by walking away from their maintenance duties. "You would condemn billions of innocent beings to death," Counselor demanded. "Without human technical support, our life support systems will fail across hundreds of worlds." His expression hardened. For 300 years, humanity has served faithfully and received nothing but contempt in return. We have watched alien species murder our children and call it cultural education. We have endured your condescension while you treated us as useful pets rather than equals. He paused, and when he continued, his voice carried the weight of centuries of accumulated grievance. But we are not monsters. Human technical personnel will remain at their posts to prevent humanitarian disasters, provided certain conditions are met. We will not allow innocent beings to die simply because their governments treated us poorly. Speaker leaned forward urgently. What conditions? First, all member species will formally apologize for 3 centuries of discriminatory treatment against humanity. Second, all humans currently serving in alien space will be granted full citizenship rights in their host nations, with complete legal equality. Third, the Galactic Council will establish a Human Rights Commission with veto power over any policies affecting human populations. The demands were reasonable, realized, which somehow made them more terrifying than outrageous ultimatums would have been. Wasn't asking for revenge or reparations. He was asking for the basic dignity that should have been accorded to any sentient species from the beginning. And if we refuse these conditions? General asked, though his voice had lost much of its earlier aggression. Smile was cold and empty. Then humanity will withdraw all technical support from alien space within 72 hours. Your civilizations will have approximately 6 months before critical system failures begin cascading across your territories. The threat wasn't delivered with anger or malice. It was simply a statement of fact, which made it infinitely more frightening than any emotional outburst would have been. Admiral said, speaking for the first time since the transmission began, "May I ask what changed? Humanity has endured poor treatment for centuries. What made the death of one human child different from all the others?" Turned his attention to the counselor and felt a chill run through his respiratory system. The human's eyes held depths of controlled fury that spoke of a species that had been pushed beyond its breaking point. "Counselor said quietly, Sarah was my daughter." The simple statement explained everything. It wasn't just another incident of alien callousness toward humanity. It was the moment when the accumulated rage of an entire species found focus and purpose. Every human who had ever been murdered, humiliated, or dismissed as irrelevant had been avenged through the destruction of the Empire. "The galaxy is about to learn something that we have known for," continued. "Humans are not weak because we choose cooperation over conquest. We are not primitive because we value life over technology, and we are definitely not helpless when someone hurts our children." The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in profound silence. For 300 years, galactic civilization had operated under the assumption that humanity was a minor species, deserving of protection and guidance from their technological superiors. In the span of 12 hours, that assumption had been revealed as catastrophically wrong. Studied the data flowing across his displays and realized that the galaxy had just witnessed the emergence of a new apex predator. Humanity hadn't just destroyed the Empire. They had demonstrated capabilities that exceeded anything previously imagined. "Speaker," he said finally, "I move to accept Admiral's conditions immediately and without modification." Around the table, other representatives nodded slowly. The age of alien dominance was over. The age of humanity had begun. And every species in the galaxy was going to have to learn to live with that reality. 6 months after the fall of the Empire, Doctor walked through the corridors of New Geneva Station with a mix of wonder and unease. The space station, built in the ruins of what had once been the sector capital, bustled with activity as representatives from dozens of former client species worked to establish new governments under human protection. The transformation was remarkable. Where once overlords had ruled through fear and technological superiority, human administrators worked alongside alien populations to build something unprecedented in galactic history, a truly cooperative interstellar government. Paused at an observation deck to watch the construction of the new shipyards. Massive industrial platforms stretched across kilometers of space, their frameworks built with technology that combined the best innovations from dozens of species. Human engineers worked side by side with metallurgists, physicists, and energy specialists. "Impressive, isn't it?" said a voice behind her. Turned to see Admiral approaching. his uniform bearing new insignia that marked him as the first human chancellor of the liberated territories. In the months since the war, he had become the face of humanity's emergence as a galactic power, though could see the weight of responsibility in his eyes. "It's not what I expected," she admitted. "When you destroyed the Empire, I thought we'd simply replace one set of overlords with another." Joined her at the observation window, watching as a mixed crew of humans and aliens maneuvered a massive reactor assembly into position. "That was never the plan. We didn't fight a war to become conquerors. We fought to ensure that no child would ever again die for the crime of being human." The station's public address system chimed softly, and a calm voice announced the arrival of a diplomatic vessel from the Galactic Council. Felt tense beside her, though his expression remained neutral. "Still no word on whether they'll accept the new territorial arrangements?" asked. Shook his head. "The Council is having difficulty accepting that the galaxy's balance of power has shifted so dramatically. They keep expecting us to make some demand that they can negotiate down, but we're not negotiating. We're simply informing them of the new reality." Through the observation window, could see the Council vessel approaching. The ship was beautiful in the way that all Council craft were, its hull incorporating design elements from multiple species to symbolize galactic unity. Today, it looked small and fragile next to the massive human dreadnoughts that escorted it to the station. "Chancellor," came a voice from communicator, "the Council delegation has arrived. They're requesting an immediate meeting." "Conference Room 7, replied, "full diplomatic protocols." As they walked toward the meeting, reflected on how much had changed since the first shots were fired at. The destruction of the Empire had sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy, but what followed had been even more surprising. Instead of seizing control of former territories, humanity had done something unprecedented. They had asked the liberated species what they wanted. The results had been chaos at first. Dozens of client species suddenly found themselves free after centuries of imperial rule, with no experience in self-governance and no infrastructure to support independent civilization. Many had begged humanity to simply take over, to provide the stability and direction they had always known under control. Humanity had refused. Instead, human advisors worked with each species to establish governments that reflected their own cultural values and needs. Human ships patrolled former space to prevent opportunistic invasions by other powers, while human engineers helped rebuild infrastructure destroyed during the Liberation War. It was a massive undertaking that stretched human resources to their limits, but it had accomplished something remarkable. For the first time in galactic history, a major power had used military victory to create freedom rather than dominance. Conference Room 7 was already occupied when and arrived. The Council delegation consisted of the same representatives who had witnessed humanity's initial announcement 6 months earlier, though their demeanor had changed considerably. Where once they had projected confident authority, now they seemed uncertain and defensive. Speaker rose as they entered, her crystalline form reflecting the room's lights. "Chancellor, Doctor, thank you for agreeing to this meeting." Took his seat at the head of the conference table, a position that would have been unthinkable for a human 6 months earlier. "Speaker, what brings the Council to our territory?" The phrasing was deliberate and pointed. "Our territory rather than former space." A clear statement that humanity now controlled nearly a quarter of known galactic space and had no intention of giving it up. Counselor activated his personal, displaying a map of current galactic political boundaries. "Chancellor, the Council wishes to discuss the irregularities in current territorial arrangements. The rapid expansion of human-controlled space has destabilized traditional power structures throughout the galaxy." Studied the map and had to suppress a smile. The destabilization referred to was actually unprecedented galactic peace. Without the Empire's constant expansion and threats, other species had been able to focus on internal development rather than military preparation. "Counselor," replied calmly, "humanity controls no territory beyond our original worlds. We provide protection and guidance to species that have requested our assistance, but each government in the liberated territories maintains full sovereignty over their own affairs." It was technically true, though knew it didn't tell the whole story. While each liberated species did govern themselves, they had all signed mutual defense pacts with Earth that effectively created the largest military alliance in galactic history. Ambassador Al's multiple limbs twitched with agitation. Chancellor, semantics aside, the reality is that human influence now extends across dozens of star systems. The traditional balance of power that has maintained galactic peace for centuries has been completely disrupted. Peace's voice carried a dangerous edge. Ambassador, do you consider the regular murder of human civilians to be peaceful? Was the systematic oppression of client species by overlords an example of galactic harmony? The council representatives exchanged uncomfortable glances, knew they were struggling with the fundamental contradiction in their position. They wanted to maintain the old order that had kept their own species safe and prosperous, but they couldn't defend the system that had allowed them to terrorize weaker civilizations for centuries. General leaned forward aggressively. Chancellor, the Council appreciates humanity's concerns about historical injustices, but the solution cannot be to replace one empire with another. We propose a gradual transition of the liberated territories to Council oversight, with appropriate guarantees for human rights and— No, said simply. The word hung in the air like a physical barrier. General stared at the human in shock, clearly unused to being refused so bluntly. No, repeated. Chancellor, you cannot simply reject Council authority. The Galactic Accords clearly state. General, interrupted, humanity from Council authority 6 months ago. The Galactic Accords no longer apply to us or to any territory under our protection. Councillor's energy form flickered with distress. Chancellor, please understand our position, the sudden emergence of a human empire. We are not an empire, said firmly. We are a defense alliance dedicated to protecting species that cannot protect themselves. Every government in the liberated territories joined us voluntarily and can leave voluntarily. Watch the Council delegates process this information. The distinction between empire and alliance might seem subtle, but it was crucial to understanding humanity's approach to galactic politics. Empires ruled through force and maintained power through oppression. The human alliance offered protection in exchange for cooperation and mutual defense. Speaker tried a different approach. Chancellor, surely you can understand our concerns. Humanity's military capabilities appear to far exceed anything we previously imagined. How can the Council be certain that human intentions will remain benevolent? For the first time since the meeting began, his expression softened slightly. Speaker, I understand your concerns because they're the same concerns we had about every alien species we encountered for 3 centuries. The difference is that we're offering proof of our intentions through our actions. He gestured toward which displayed real-time data from across the liberated territories. In the 6 months since the Liberation War, how many worlds have human forces occupied? How many alien governments have we overthrown? How many species have we enslaved or genocided? The answer was obvious, none. Meanwhile, continued, former client species are experiencing unprecedented prosperity and freedom. Trade between liberated worlds has increased by 300%. Literacy rates are rising as populations gain access to education previously reserved for elites. Birth rates are increasing as species no longer fear that their children will be taken as tribute or military conscripts. The statistics were impressive, new, but they didn't address the Council's real concern. What worried them wasn't human malevolence, it was human competence. In 6 months, humanity had demonstrated the ability to destroy any military force in the galaxy and the administrative skill to govern a quarter of known space more effectively than the previous rulers. Chancellor, said carefully, perhaps we could discuss specific arrangements. The Council would be willing to recognize human sovereignty over certain territories in exchange for guarantees regarding. Counselor, interrupted, you're still thinking about this backwards. We're not asking for Council recognition. We're informing you of the new reality and offering you the opportunity to adapt to it peacefully. The threat was implicit but unmistakable. Humanity had demonstrated the ability to destroy the Empire in a matter of hours. If the Council chose to resist rather than adapt, they would face the same fate. What exactly are you proposing? Speaker asked. Activated his own, displaying a new map of galactic political boundaries. The human alliance will maintain its current territory and membership. Council species will maintain their current territory and sovereignty. We establish new diplomatic protocols for interaction between our respective governments, with formal recognition of each other's territorial integrity. studied the map, and realized what was proposing, the formal division of the galaxy into two major power blocks. It was a dramatic departure from the single government system the Council had maintained for centuries, but it offered stability and clarity. "And if Council species refuse these terms?" General asked. His expression became glacially cold. "Then the Council will learn why every human military academy still teaches courses on asymmetric warfare. We've spent 3 centuries learning everything there is to know about your technologies, your military doctrines, and your social structures. We know exactly how to destroy each of your civilizations with minimal casualties to innocent populations." The silence that followed was profound. Could see the Council delegates struggling with the implications of what they'd just heard. Humanity wasn't just offering an ultimatum, they were providing a detailed technical analysis of their enemy's vulnerabilities. "The choice is yours," continued. "Adapt to the new reality peacefully or resist and face the consequences. But understand this, the age of alien dominance over humanity is over. It ended the moment Commander Al murdered my daughter. What happens next depends entirely on whether you learn the right lesson from the Empire's fate." Ambassador Al was the first to speak. We will need to consult with our respective governments before making any formal agreements." "Of course," replied. "You have 30 standard days to provide your response. After that, we'll assume you've chosen resistance and act accordingly." The meeting ended with the Council delegation departing in thoughtful silence, watched their ship disappear into faster-than-light travel, and wondered what they would report to their governments. "Do you think they'll accept the new order?" she asked. Stared out at the construction yards where humans and aliens worked together to build something unprecedented. "They'll accept it because they have no choice. The galaxy has changed. The old system of strong species dominating weak ones is finished. What we're building here isn't just an alliance, it's proof that a better way is possible." Nodded, though she couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest challenges still lay ahead. Humanity had won the war and established peace, but maintaining that peace would require constant vigilance and diplomacy. In the distance, she could see human ships patrolling the space lanes, their hulls bearing the insignia of the human alliance. Each ship carried the promise that no species under human protection would ever again face the fate that had befallen the Empire's victims. It was a promise that humanity intended to keep, regardless of what the galaxy thought about their methods. 25 years after the liberation of the Empire, Chancellor Sarah Martinez stood on the observation deck of Earth Station 1, watching the graduation ceremony of the first class of the Galactic Military Academy. The sight would have been unimaginable a generation earlier. Young beings from 24 species training together as officers in the Human Alliance Defense Corps. Sarah was named for her great-aunt, the little girl whose death had sparked humanity's emergence as a galactic power. Today, she bore the weight of that legacy as the youngest chancellor in human history, elected by overwhelming margins across every world in the Alliance. "Nervous?" asked Fleet Admiral James Park, her military advisor and longtime friend. Sarah smiled, watching as human cadets stood alongside, and even reformed classmates. "Excited, actually. When my great-uncle destroyed the Empire, people thought he was starting a war that would consume the galaxy. Instead, he created the longest period of peace in galactic history." It was true. The partition of the galaxy into Human Alliance and Council territories had initially been seen as a temporary measure, a way to prevent immediate conflict while tensions cooled. Instead, it had evolved into something unprecedented, a stable balance between two major power blocks that competed through innovation rather than warfare. The Council had initially resisted the new order, but reality had forced adaptation. Without the Empire's constant aggression, Council species had been able to focus on internal development. Trade between Alliance and Council territories had flourished as both sides realized that prosperity was more profitable than conquest. "Chancellor," came a voice from the communication system, "the Earth delegation has arrived. President Williams requests an immediate meeting." Sarah nodded to Admiral Park and made her way to the diplomatic suite. President Maria Williams represented the old Earth, the pre-war human government that had focused on peaceful integration with galactic civilization. Today's meeting would determine whether that peaceful approach could survive in the new galactic order. The conference room was filled with holographic displays showing the current state of galactic affairs. At the center sat President Williams, a woman in her 70s who had spent her career believing that humanity's future lay in cooperation with alien civilizations. Chancellor, Williams said without preamble, Earth's government cannot continue to support alliance policies that antagonize the Galactic Council. The tensions between our territories are becoming unsustainable. Sarah studied the intelligence reports flowing across the displays. For the past year, minor incidents had been increasing along the border between Alliance and Council space. Ships being delayed at checkpoints, trade negotiations stalling over technical issues, diplomatic protests over territorial violations that may or may not have actually occurred. Madam President, Sarah replied, these tensions are exactly what we expected during the transition period. The Council is testing our resolve while they adapt to the new reality. Or, Williams countered, they're genuine concerns about alliance expansionism. Chancellor, in the past 5 years, 16 more species have requested membership in our alliance. At what point does liberation become conquest? It was a fair question, and one that kept Sarah awake at night. The human alliance had grown from the original liberated territories to include nearly half of all known galactic space. Each new member claimed they joined voluntarily for protection against Council aggression or internal threats, but the end result was the same. Humanity now controlled the largest political entity in galactic history. Madam President, Admiral Park interjected, every species that has joined us did so through their own democratic processes. We've never used force to compel membership, and we've honored every request for withdrawal. Have there been any requests for withdrawal? Williams asked pointedly. The silence that followed was answer enough. No species had ever left the human alliance, though whether that was due to satisfaction with membership or fear of the consequences was a matter of debate even within human circles. Sarah activated her personal, displaying a timeline of galactic conflicts over the past 25 years. Madam President, look at these numbers. Before the Liberation War, the galaxy averaged 57 armed conflicts per year. Since the alliance was established, that number has dropped to fewer than 10, and most of those are minor border disputes that are resolved through mediation rather than warfare. The statistics were impressive, but Williams wasn't convinced. Chancellor, peace through intimidation isn't true peace. It's the absence of conflict maintained by the threat of overwhelming force. And is that necessarily wrong? Sarah asked. The Pax Romana lasted for centuries because potential enemies knew the cost of challenging Roman power. The Pax Britannica maintained global trade routes for decades through naval supremacy. Now we have the Pax, and for the first time in galactic history, species can develop their civilizations without fear of conquest by stronger neighbors. Williams leaned back in her chair, studying the young woman who represented humanity's future. Sarah, I knew your great uncle was a good man who did what he thought was necessary to protect his family and his species. But power changes people, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, Sarah finished. Lord Acton's observation about human nature, but what if human nature itself has changed? She gestured toward the holographic displays showing Alliance territory. Madam President, every major decision in the Alliance requires consensus from the member species governments. Humans don't rule this organization, we coordinate it. Our military supremacy gives us the authority to maintain peace, but our actual governance is more democratic than anything the galaxy has ever seen. It was technically true, though Sarah knew it didn't tell the whole story. While Alliance member species did have equal votes in the civilian government, human military forces maintained ultimate authority over security decisions. In practice, this meant that humanity could override civilian decisions when they deemed it necessary for Alliance security. Chancellor, Williams said, the Galactic Council has submitted a formal proposal for renewed diplomatic talks. They're offering significant concessions in exchange for a reduction in Alliance military presence along their borders. Sarah studied the Council's proposal on her personal display. The offer was substantial: formal recognition of Alliance territorial claims, expanded trade agreements, and even joint scientific research projects. In exchange, they wanted humanity to reduce its fleet strength by 30% and agree to binding arbitration for future territorial disputes. What's your assessment, Admiral? Sarah asked. Park's expression was grim. It's a trap, Chancellor. Council intelligence estimates suggest they're developing new military technologies in partnership with species from outside our local galactic region. They want us to reduce our fleet strength while they prepare for a coordinated assault. The intelligence reports were troubling. Sensor data indicated that Council territories were hosting delegations from the hegemony of the far stars, a militaristic empire from the galaxy's opposite spiral arm. The hegemony had reportedly been expanding their influence through conquest and forced assimilation of weaker species. "Are we certain about their intentions?" Williams asked. Sarah pulled up the classified intelligence files. 3 weeks ago, our deep reconnaissance assets detected hegemony warships in Council territory. Analysis of their technology suggests capabilities that exceed our current defensive systems. If the Council is forming an alliance with the hegemony, we could be facing a two-front war within 5 years. The prospect was sobering. The human alliance had grown powerful through the absorption of former territories and the voluntary membership of dozens of species, but they had never faced a coordinated assault by multiple major powers. "Chancellor," Williams said quietly, "if this intelligence is accurate, then we're looking at a galactic war that could destroy billions of lives. Surely there must be a diplomatic solution." Sarah turned to look out at the vast construction yards surrounding Earth Station 1. Human engineers worked alongside alien specialists to build ships that incorporated the best technology from every Alliance member species. Each vessel represented not just military capability, but also the cooperation and shared purpose that had made the Alliance possible. "Madam President," she said finally, 25 years ago my great-uncle made a choice. He could have accepted Saras' death as the price of human integration into galactic civilization, or he could fight back against the system that allowed it to happen. He chose to fight, and the galaxy changed forever. She turned back to face Williams directly. "Today, we face a similar choice. We can reduce our military strength and hope that the Council's intentions are peaceful, or we can prepare for the war that our intelligence suggests is coming. If we're wrong about their intentions, the worst that happens is we remain strong enough to protect our allies. If we're right, and we reduce our defenses." The implication hung in the air. If the Alliance weakened its military and the Council attacked, the result would be catastrophic. Every liberated species, every world that had found freedom under human protection, would face conquest or destruction. "What are you proposing?" Williams asked. Sarah activated another holographic display, this one showing the Alliance's military development programs. "We accelerate Project Prometheus, full implementation within 18 months. Admiral Park's eyes widened. Project Prometheus was the Alliance's most classified military program, designed to create weapons systems that would ensure human military supremacy for centuries to come. The technology involved was so advanced that even Alliance member species weren't fully briefed on its capabilities. "Chancellor," Williams protested, "Prometheus technology makes our current weapons look primitive. If we deploy those systems, we won't just maintain the balance of power, we'll shatter it completely." "Good," Sarah replied coldly. "Madam President, the galaxy has tried cooperation, diplomacy, and mutual respect. The result has been 3,000 years of constant warfare between species seeking to dominate each other. The only thing that has created lasting peace is the certain knowledge that challenging human power means certain destruction." She gestured toward the intelligence reports showing hegemony ship movements. "The Council may be peaceful, or they may be preparing for war, but the hegemony of the far stars is definitely preparing for war. Our choice isn't between peace and conflict, it's between winning the war that's coming and losing everything we've built." Williams was quiet for a long moment, studying the data on her personal display. Finally, she looked up at Sarah with something that might have been pride mixed with regret. "You know," she said softly, "you sound exactly like your great-uncle did 25 years ago. Determined, brilliant, and absolutely terrifying." Sarah smiled grimly. "Thank you, Madam President. I consider that the highest compliment." The meeting ended with Williams agreeing to support the acceleration of Project Prometheus, though Sarah could see the older woman's reservations. The pre-war generation still believed in the possibility of peaceful coexistence between species, but they were rapidly being outnumbered by humans who had grown up in the era of Alliance dominance. Later that evening, Sarah stood again on the observation deck, watching the stars wheel slowly overhead. Somewhere out there, in the vast darkness between the spiral arms, alien civilizations were making their own plans. Some would seek alliance with humanity, others would resist, and a few would try to destroy everything humans had built. It didn't matter. Humanity had learned the most important lesson of galactic civilization. The strong did whatever they pleased, and the weak endured whatever they must. For 3 centuries, humans had been weak and had endured. Now they were strong, and they would do whatever was necessary to remain so. The galaxy had shaped humanity through centuries of abuse and contempt. Now humanity would shape the galaxy in return. And when the last enemy ship burned in the darkness between the stars, when the last aggressive species learned the price of threatening human children, perhaps the galaxy would finally know peace. Until then, the ships would continue to patrol the void, carrying weapons that could sterilize worlds and crews that remembered why they carried them. The legacy of one murdered child had become the foundation of a new galactic order. It was, Sarah reflected, exactly what Sarah would have wanted.